Sheila hated her father. He had 6 children, and he would do unspeakable things to his children whenever he felt like it, whenever he had a bad day, whenever he was bored. He liked power and exerting control over the children. And the way that he figured out how to do this was by terrorizing them. But after Sheila's father would terrify her or her siblings, he would smile in her face and he would be dad all over again. So Sheila actually didn't even realize that she hated her father. She thought that she loved him. She thought that this was love. This torment that she was experiencing was just ping-pong back and forth between, well, dad's home, dad's being nice today, and then it would turn whenever he felt like it. Sheila had no idea when it would come, and Sheila had no control over it. So when she became an adult, she would seek out men that were nothing like her father. These men generally kept to themselves. They were very quiet, they were kind, and they did what Sheila said. That's what she likes. But because she was stuck in this dynamic and she chose men that were nothing like him, she became just like her father. Welcome back to another week, another Sinister. It's me, your favorite Hot Topic employee, BOZE. Maybe when I dye my hair, I'll stop saying that, but for now, whatever. This week's case is pretty interesting, and I'm gonna do things a little bit differently. I'm really going to go in depth with Sheila's childhood, and I'm gonna go in depth with her relationships. And for once, I trust that you have been watching Sinister long enough that you are going to know when to take off your empathy cap and when to keep it on. Now, I say that I'm going to avoid telling you when to put your empathy cap on and off, but you know me. I'll do my best, okay? I'll do my best. There's going to be times where you're going to see it in my eyes, okay? But I'm trying. I'm really trying. If you don't know what your empathy cap is, here on Sinister, we go through stories of female killers, and I'm not just here to talk to you about the crime and the forensics and the court cases. Those are other episodes. Here, I want to talk about these patterns and the trauma and basically figure out why did they do what they did. And this week we have an insane amount of childhood and relationship history that all leads to this breaking point. Now here on this channel or in the show, we keep our empathy caps with us because it is okay to feel sympathy for the child that they once were. There are people all around us that grow up in similar situations. All I ask you to do is that when there comes a time where there's a fork in the road, where they can choose to be a good part of society or a bad, that's when you should start questioning whether you keep your empathy cap on. And when you see them approach this fork in the road over and over and over and over again, and they continue to pick the worst option for themselves and society, you take that cap off and you throw it in the fucking garbage. Today's video is sponsored by Lumi. Lumi is a full body deodorant that even comes in a little travel size that you can take on the go. But did you know that Lumi actually provides protection for up to 72 hours? Lumi has a special ingredient called malic acid that stops odors before they even start. And the good news is you can literally use it from head to toe. I'm not saying you got stinky feet, but if you do, put some Lumi on them. Lumi has a variety of scents like clean tangerine, lavender, sage, and toasted coconut. You can pick whatever you want or switch it up every other day. Also, the best part is it was actually created by an OBGYN that was looking for solutions that actually work and are non-harmful. So if you guys want to try Lumi, 1, I got a little discount for you, and then 2, they've got an awesome starter pack. Look, I always say these YouTube ads, they come with a little discount and they got a discount on the website. You may as well try. You might end up finding a product that you never want to let go of. So if you guys want to try Lumi and get 15% off, 15% off of any of the products, but I definitely recommend the starter pack. It's got a solid stick deodorant, a cream tube deodorant, and then you get to pick out the other 2 that you want, just anything that fits into the starter pack. Okay, so all you got to do is go to LumiDeodorant.com. That's LumeDeodorant.com. When you go to checkout, use the code SINISTER and it'll take your 15% off. So remember, that's lumideodorant.com and then use the code SINISTER at checkout. Sheila K. Bailey was born July 4th, 1958 in Alabama. Now, being a July 4th baby could be interesting. It's not a holiday that usually steals your thunder. But, her father found a very strange way to weaponize her birthday against her. Anytime he would do something wrong, and Sheila would get upset about it, whether she was a child or a teenager, her dad would look right at her and say, "There's my little firecracker," and walk off. It's so strange to me that in one subtle comment, he used her birthday to diminish her anger and just dismissed it. This is something that Sheila would talk about quite often, and her sisters as well, because it would frustrate her. Her dad was a severe alcoholic. And listen, he wasn't just the type of drunk that was knocked out, passed out on the couch and neglecting his kids. No, he was present. He was wildly inebriated night after night, and he made sure that his children knew how much he loved alcohol. That was his buddy. See, a lot of times when people become alcoholics, they kind of create this carbon copy of themselves. Their drink or their alcohol, or maybe it's a drug or something, it becomes a buddy. And this buddy creates a separate version of themselves that they like more. And listen, Sheila's dad loved when he was this version of himself. As an alcoholic, he was never alone, and he always had another side of him that was reinforcing his bad behavior. One example of how bad his alcoholism was, when Sheila was only 6 years old, her dad came home one night and he was absolutely wasted. For a child like Sheila living in a home like this, you're hoping and you're praying that when dad comes home this night, maybe he'll be dad. Maybe he won't be drunk. Maybe he won't bring his buddy with him this time. But as soon as he walks through that door, you can tell he's got his buddy with him. And on this night in particular, and when I say buddy, I mean him and the alcohol, he comes home and the kids all know that he's wasted, and they brace themselves. And they have to brace themselves almost every night. It's like the times that dad is out drinking are probably the only times that they find peace. And he gets home and he flips over the stove. I can only imagine how jarring this must have been for the kids, because not only is it confirmation that he's drunk again, but it's a statement about what could possibly happen next. Well, this night wasn't too bad because he flipped over the stove, and then he walked over to the fridge and he tried to flip the fridge over too, but he wasn't strong enough. So instead, he flung open the door of the freezer in the fridge and he started taking out all of the food, and he just started throwing it at his children. Eggs, milk, old food, anything he could, just shattering dishes and just throwing it at all the kids, pelting them, while Sheila had to stand there and watch, getting hit by food. For Sheila, the only way that she could protect herself from her father was by being compliant. She still wanted her father to love her, because in those times that he wasn't so drunk, she thought dad's not that bad. But throwing the food wasn't the end of it. Sheila ran to the garage with her mom and the other kids, trying to hide, trying to get away from her father. See, this is something that gives him an immense amount of power. By being violent, scary, or unpredictable, he was able to scare 7 people into cowering in a corner or dispersing and trying to get away from him. For someone like him, this is fun, and they feed off of that power. And they want to see how much they can get. There is no limit to what they want from you. They want your fear. They want your emotional volatility. They want to know that they matter by figuring out how much power you're willing to give them. So while Sheila, her mother, and her siblings were cowering in the garage, they realized that her father was not going to stop. They tried to get away in the car, and he punched through the window. And then he went out to the farm, and he got an axe. The children ran away. They're on a farm, literally running through the cornfields, while her father chases her with an axe. I'm not sure if it was just for fear or power or drunkenness, attention, whatever it may be. Sheila got away mostly unscathed. At one point, he saw her crawling through the cornfield and he threw something at her so hard that it scarred her physically for life. But ultimately, her dad couldn't find anyone and he walked 5 miles until he sobered up to a neighbor's house. And that was the end of the night. That night in particular happened when Sheila was 6 years old. And these were not one-time occurrences. Shit, they weren't even weekly occurrences. It could be any day of the week. This is the beginning of Sheila developing a pattern of terrorizing people. These events were so horrific. They traumatized Sheila for life in a way that she can't even fathom or rationalize. Of course, her mom is justifying the abuse because she married this person and can't get away from them. No one else is saying everything. Everyone's just kind of dealing with it, and nobody is saving her. Nobody's going to tell her that what her father did was wrong, and so what she's about to pick up is also going to be wrong. But it did not stop there. Sheila was the youngest out of the family, and her older sister tried to protect her, but there was not much she could do when Sheila's father started touching them. Both sisters were molested by their father. He was a pedophile. He was a drunk, abusive, terror-inflicting pedophile. As we get through the story, I do want you guys to know that this is all true. From adolescence to her teenage years, Sheila's life was full of abuse, torture, molestation, and everyone just ignoring and normalizing all of the fucked up shit that was happening to this girl. I think that's the big part about it. When a child has nothing to compare it to, they don't understand that they deserve better, and also that they probably shouldn't go on in the future and do that to other people just because it was done to them. But I want to warn you, whatever you think Sheila is about to do, it's going to be 10 times worse. So she attended a place called Fort Payne High School, and Sheila really starts to lean into her beauty and femininity. She, wears a lot of perfumes. She's always dressing very risque. She was very flirty. I mean, somebody actually said that when she was in high school, her favorite thing was attention from guys, and they would just see her in the hallway actively seducing them, okay? I'm already thinking that this is a spinoff of the sexual trauma and this fucked up world that her dad put her in. But to make it even worse, she adopted the nickname Firecracker. Just like her dad would use to demean her and minimize her anger, she actually took that name on. It's almost like she tried to find some ownership in the things that hurt her so that at least she was controlling them. Sheila's efforts to lock down a man work because at just 23 years old, she ends up marrying John Baxter. John was a single father that was living in a place called Fort Payne, Alabama. And when he met Sheila, I mean, this chick would turn it on, okay? If you look at recent photos of Sheila, you're like, oh God, oh my God. But like, when you look at young pictures of her, I mean, she tried to make herself as glamorous as she could. She had this big kind of curly hair. She always had this really seductive look on her face. She was dressed in like revealing clothing. Like, she was gonna get you, and she sure did. She got John, and they were married in just 2 months. John thought that Sheila would make a good mother and be a good wife. They settle in, and they start living together. But soon, Sheila realizes, I don't want to be a fucking wife. I don't want to be the mother of a child that's not mine. I don't want to do all this stuff. But she doesn't key John into this. She just kind of starts acting on it. And what I mean by acting on it was Sheila did not like John's daughter. So when John would leave and go to work, Sheila would take his toddler daughter. She'd give her some medicine, something to just kind of sedate her. And she would put her in the closet all day while her father was gone. While Sheila left Wendy in the closet, she would just run around the apartment doing jack shit while she had Wendy, a child, locked in the closet. She decided that she wanted to be an artist or a painter. She wasn't working on any skills, trying to get better at that. She was just telling people that she was going to be an artist. And people would wonder, where is Wendy? Where is your new husband's daughter? Why is it just you at home talking about your dreams? Where's the child? Well, one day John came home early and Wendy was in the closet. And when he asked her what happened, Wendy told John that Sheila had put her in the closet, broken her toys in front of her, broken the toy, and then left the broken toy in the closet with her. And then she told the child, quote, "If you ever tell your daddy, I'll kill you and your daddy both." Sheila was doing this when she was only 23 years old. And the minute that John found out, even though he was younger than her, he was only 19, he did not give a fuck. He got Wendy out of there. He got his daughter out of there. They left in seconds. Poof, John is gone. He has disappeared. And the divorce was finalized just a year later. He was not dealing with her shit. He said, we gotta go. This episode is sponsored by Squarespace. If you own a business, if you are creating art, if you are, I don't know, you need a portfolio, you gotta have a website. And listen, you ever been trying to hire somebody online for something and you like go to their little Google page thing and it's just a call and directions button and they don't have a website? Okay, somebody knows what I'm talking about. But that I need to look at the website. I look at people's websites all the time for legitimacy. So if you're creating something, you can give your brand so much more value just by putting it under a customizable domain. And hey, Squarespace can help. Whether you're building a website for you, an event that you're putting together, or if you're looking to build a shop or sell something, it is all right there. Squarespace gives you everything that you need to create and offer a service and then provide it to the public. Whether it's getting the information out about it, high quality, beautiful photos and customizable layouts, or, actually setting up the shop so that you can take payments. Yes, it is all right there. And here's the crazy thing. I feel like building a website probably feels very intimidating to some people, but the way that they set up their design features are so easy. You go in, you pick out a template that you like, and even if you don't like the colors, you can customize all of the colors, the fonts, the images that you put in, and then you've just got to fill it up with text. And get this, if you don't know what to write, the Squarespace bot can basically help you. Just type in your product description or what you want to say, and it'll help you fill out the whole space. Not to mention, they also have the ability to send out email campaigns, show all of your analytics on the back end. And I mean, listen, if you ever want to make a change, it's just 2 clicks. How can you go wrong? So look, if you need a website, you gotta try Squarespace. Just go to squarespace.com/sinister or use Sinister at checkout and you can get 10% off of your first domain purchase. That's squarespace.com/sinister. So now Sheila was financially dependent on John. He's gone. She doesn't have anywhere to stay. So she's gotta get a job, and she gets a job at this fast food place. And while she's at the fast food place, she ends up meeting her next guy, a guy named Ronnie. Ronnie Jennings was tall, he was attractive, he kind of had like a little edge to him, he liked to have some fun, and then also, he didn't have any kids, and that's exactly what Sheila was looking for at this time. You'll notice Sheila takes notes every time at the end of a relationship and then switches it up a little bit. Ronnie was actually Sheila's coworker, and they would have a lot of fun skipping work sometimes, just sitting around smoking weed. They liked doing kind of bad stuff together. It was fun. And I think Ronnie liked how, carefree and she came off as really sexy and fun. And also, dude, here's the thing. With chicks like this, they are always putting on a front in the beginning. They know what is underneath it all. And so early on, they are really, really laying it on thick. And Ronnie really liked her. He thought she was just a laid back, fun loving, whatever kind of girl. Meanwhile, Sheila is just loving the relationship with Ronnie so much that she really tries to hint at him hey, we should get married. And Ronnie's like, yeah, we'll see. And she's like, no, really, let's get married. And he's like, we'll see. And she's like, why don't we get married? And so Ronnie's like, okay, yeah, okay. You know what? You're hot, you're fun, whatever. Let's fucking get married. So they get married and they move to Chattanooga. This was a pretty big deal because, Ronnie was kind of dabbling in a little bit of illegal business. And then also, he liked to flirt. He liked to date around. He was an attractive guy. but Sheila managed to tie him down. I believe that the marriage was a goal point for her. Maybe she thought that if she got the ring that she would feel worthy, or like, she had locked him down, or she had won or something. I'm not really sure. But as soon as she got the ring on her finger, the mask came off and her childhood terrorizer came out all over again in her. She could not resist it. She would have these moments where she loved and then hated Ronnie so desperately. She would actually chase him around the house with scissors. She would nick him sometimes with the scissors, like actually assaulting and attacking him, and then would tell him, "Oh, you're fine. Be a man. Get over it." I mean, once again, this is exactly what her father did to her. At this point, Ronnie was terrified for his life. Like, this was not the woman that he wanted to marry. And Sheila starts to detect that he's afraid of her, and she doesn't like that. Come on, Sheila just wants to scare you, and you gotta love her. So she gets pretty pissed that Ronnie's like not obsessed with her after she attacked him with scissors, and she's like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go cheat. So then she starts having affairs with multiple men. Sheila, while dating Ronnie, her fast food coworker boyfriend, had charmed this rich man so much that he was about to leave his wife for Sheila. Bro, she is gaming the system over here. And he had promised Sheila he was going to do it. He was going to make the announcement, blah, 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 blah. But then his dad found out, who was overseeing the company, and his dad fired Sheila and demanded that he calls it off and move on. While this is happening, Ronnie has no idea that she's in the middle of this intense affair with this like rich man that she was actually planning on leaving him for. After she gets fired from her job, she absolutely begins to spiral. And Ronnie doesn't know what's going on. He has no idea the whole backstory of like why she feels so rejected and upset and abandoned right now. And she spirals out harder than ever. And finally, Ronnie is like, bitch, I cannot do this anymore. Then when Ronnie tries to leave, because she's such a control freak, she has to like be the one that leaves first. She said to him verbatim, "I'll show you how bad I want out of this marriage." And then that night she went and took an entire bottle of pills and then crashed her car. Sheila has a pattern of extreme attention seeking, and maybe I think her dad probably also had a pattern of attention seeking. Attention seeking can come in very different forms. It can be innocent, it can be malicious, it can be mischievous, it can be a lot of different things. But the self-destructive attention seeking is the most fucked up stuff that you can do. It's like when people threaten to kill themselves and things like that. Like, I do not think that Sheila really wanted to die when she swallowed this whole bottle of pills and then crashed her car. She does not care about herself so much that she's willing to punish the people around her for not doing what she wants by hurting herself. Some of you have probably been in relationships with people like this or had family members or something like that. Even though they have done something wrong and their behavior is bad and it's clear as day, if they cannot make themselves the victim through the situation, then they will hurt themselves and say, this is all your fault. You're the reason why I had to do this. If you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have hurt myself. And look, I'm going to tell you right now, if you pick up on that in people, you need to run. You need to run. And if you are doing that to people, you may not realize what you are doing. You are hurting so badly that you just want to know that you matter. And you really feel like you don't want to be here. But this is one of the most toxic situations that two people can be in. One person that cares a lot about another, but they're at their wits' end. And then another person that cares a lot about this person and doesn't want to be abandoned, and they will do anything to keep them there. It's like there is no way out of this dynamic. It's sick. It gets to a point where it's very sick. If you're watching on YouTube, you may notice that my video cut out here for some reason. But this is a very important part of the story. So give it a beat and the video will be right back. So Sheila takes these pills and crashes the car and ends up in the psych ward. She was released after 30 days and she and Ronnie were on this roller coaster for a hot minute. But eventually, after 4 years in 1986, Ronnie finally calls the marriage off. And even still, he doesn't really go in on Sheila. He just calls her, quote, unbalanced. Next, a guy named Wilfred LaBarre enters Sheila's life. Now, Wilfred was born in 1926. He is much older than her. He's about 60 years old, and he's been married twice already. Now, Wilfred had recently lost his second wife, and people said she was the love of his life. They were supposed to be together forever. But unfortunately, she passed away early from cancer. The neighbors said that Wilfred was absolutely crushed. He was depressed. They could see it all over his face and his posture. And it was really difficult for him to move on until somebody told him, hey, why don't you put out a personals ad? So Wilfred, at 60 years old, puts on his suit, his tie. He has a friend take a photo of him, and he puts a personal ad in the newspaper in 1987. Y'all aren't gonna believe this. Okay, so Sheila sees this ad, and she writes back. However, she also sends in a photo of herself. She was completely nude except for a tiny pair of pink underwear. That is the photo that she sent to him in his personals request for love. Here's the note she wrote along with the risque photo. Dear special man, I am 28, 5'5", and weigh 117 pounds. I do not smoke. I have a great sense of humor, and I love life. I judge a person from the inside, the mind, and heart. As you requested, a photograph is enclosed, and she's naked in it. And if you wish to know more about me, you may call. I would like to have a conversation with you. You could tell me all about New Hampshire. I hear it's lovely. Good luck with your ad, Sheila. This note is so normal and hey, just responding to your ad. But when it's paired with the photo, Sheila is fishing for a particular type of man, a man that will crumble to sex, and also somebody that needs her. So not everybody would respond to somebody's request that came with a nude photo, but there's a specific type of person that would, and that is exactly what Sheila is looking for. Wilfred was just immediately taken back by her response, and he calls her right away. He got her a plane ticket, and he flies her out to his home in a place called Epping, New Hampshire. The house was on a remote farm, but it wasn't like a farm where there was a lot of hard labor. It was mostly a horse farm, and it was just a mile off of the main road. They could access town. It was a beautiful home. They considered it a luxury property. Now, when Sheila gets here, she decided, oh, this is nice. I think I'll stay. So everyone around town starts seeing Wilfred's new girlfriend all the time. And at first, they're happy for him. But, Sheila can't help but flirt with every single person that crosses her path. Also, Wilfred's got a little bit of money, so she really starts taking care of herself. She dyed her hair to this high-maintenance platinum blonde color. She was always seen driving around in a silver Mercedes, her hair just blowing in the wind. And also, they gave her a nickname. Her nickname was Sheila the Peeler, because the people in town said that, listen, if you run into Sheila, either your clothes are coming off or hers are. Now, Sheila was not working besides flirting with everybody in town, and she had dreams of being a country music singer. So Wilfred, wanting to support his new partner, actually took her out to Tennessee to meet music and agents and try to get started with this thing that she really wanted, but nothing came from it. I feel like Sheila probably didn't show it, but this was a massive rejection of a dream that she wanted. And even though Wilfred did everything in his power to help her with that, she actually probably got really upset with Wilfred because she cannot accept her own failure. And she in turn blames him for this country music career not going anywhere, all because he's the one that introduced her to everybody in Tennessee. Sheila cannot take any blame or accountability for herself. It was after this trip to Tennessee that Sheila's affection started to turn a bit more violent and menacing. Wilfred was suddenly incredibly afraid of Sheila, so much so that his daughter even noticed he was not the same person that he was before he met her. She actually said, quote, "My father was not a fearful person at all, but after Sheila came, his whole personality changed. as Wilfred's fear grew, Sheila's assertion of control in his life also expanded. She started to actually take over his chiropractor business, where he'd been servicing clients for years and years and years. He had plenty of good relationships. But when Sheila came in, she started jacking up the prices like crazy, even though he was doing the work, and then creating issues with his patients because they were paying an exorbitant amount of money out of nowhere. And it was like there was nothing he could do. She would argue that she was maximizing profits. Meanwhile, dude, I wouldn't be surprised if she was taking money somewhere from the company. But, there's no proof of that. I just wouldn't be surprised. So Sheila once again takes on this pattern of not knowing whether she loves or hates her partner, and she just starts treating him horribly. His daughter actually told a little story where she said, quote, "My dad's cousin Ed," it was her father's business partner, used to live in the apartment above the office. Sheila wanted to raise his rent for the first time after many years. He had been living there for practically nothing and couldn't afford to pay more. He had a Doberman, and she threatened that if the rent didn't go up to $700 a month, she was going to kill his dog. 3 days later, the dog, who was not sick, dropped dead. Oh, by the way, that's her quote. She said drop dead, not me. So throughout the course of her relationship with Wilfred, the police were called multiple times. But Sheila, being an abuser, she would get her version of the story in with the police. And she would also flirt with them a little bit, touch their chest a little bit, just tell, he's old, he's losing it. I keep everything together around here. And she was able to even manipulate the police officers because he thought, okay, well, if I call the police, then they're going to handle it. But, he wasn't fighting for himself to tell what had happened or his version of events or his story or anything. He was just hoping that the police would stop her or do something. Wilfred never really got any justice. And it wasn't until way later that his daughter would start telling people she was threatening to kill him and kill the horses. Now, this is fucking crazy. Sheila is in total control and has Wilfred in absolute maximum fear. If he does a single thing, he's getting beat, he's getting smeared. She would just make up shit about him and then go say it like she was his wife that knew his private personal life, and people would believe it. So she was able to smear him because he didn't know what to do. He was too nice, and that is exactly the type of person that Sheila wants. Now, remember that guy I told you about that she was trying to raise the rent on? The one whose dog mysteriously passed away? Well, even after the dog mysteriously passed away, Sheila still kicked him out. And then she moved into that apartment above the chiropractic office. So she moves out of Wilfred's house, but still occupies the building above his office. It's like he can't get away from her. And not to mention, she just shows up at the fucking house in New Hampshire whenever she wants to. Now, while she's living in the apartment above Wilfred's chiropractic office, she gets married to another man. See, she and Wilfred were only common law married. And actually, no, they weren't. She was just making shit up and putting her name all over all of his documents. She wasn't legally married to Wilfred. So technically, she could go legally get married to somebody else. I don't even know if the courts would have upheld this forced common law marriage. But then she goes on to actually begin dating and seeing other guys while she's living in the chiropractic apartment office thing, whatever, and then marries this guy. This guy's name was Wayne Ennis. He was originally from Jamaica, and he came to America. He had dreams of just trying to create a better life. He wanted to work really hard, but he suffered a little back injury, and that's how he ended up at Wilfred's chiropractic office, where he met Sheila. Now, meeting patients and sleeping with them from her, quote, common law husband's office was already a fetish for her, but she actually wrote in her journal that she dreamed of a, quote, dark-skinned lover from Jamaica. This woman was sexually traumatized as a child, but at what point? At what point is this not just hypersexuality? That's my question, okay? Now, Sheila is so manipulative that she marries Wayne with Wilfred's blessing. Now, I don't know if Wilfred just wanted out of the relationship or if she conned him into this or if, I don't know, but she still pretty much is controlling Wilfred's life while going off with this other guy that she's writing in journals about fetishizing the color of his skin. So then, as usual, Sheila can keep her little mask on for a couple weeks, a couple months. Depends on how much she's trying to secure the bag. Well, with Wayne, this wasn't about love. It wasn't about sex. It was about trying to find somebody to kill her husband. That's right. She married a black man and then immediately started asking him to kill her husband. Sheila was telling him like, oh, I wish a horse would just kick him in the head and trample him over. Or, oh, we should do this. Da, da, da. And he would be like, hey, I am not a murderer. I have not killed anybody. I did not intend to kill anybody. In fact, I moved to America to have a better life. So, you know what? I don't want to kill anybody. And Sheila was so enraged the second time that he told her, no, I don't want to kill anybody, that while she was driving the car and they were having this conversation, she began to whip the car back and forth so hard that he hit his head on the car repeatedly on the windows. And that's when he realized, oh my God, this woman is fucking crazy. When people like her do things like this, they're one, trying to see if their tactics work on you. If their tactics work on you, then they like you and they want you. But if their tactics don't work on you, then you're not their person. You're not their person. They'll go away. But if this type of fear and manipulation and intimidation works on you, then they're going to go even deeper because that's what she knows. Once again, I believe that she is mimicking the patterns of her father. Now, these people are also looking for somebody that needs them. They love to feel important. They must feel needed. And in this case, her new husband is not originally an American citizen. So if he divorces his wife, who knows what'll happen to him? So now she's got her new husband Wayne and Wilfred under her thumb, all in one place. Here's a little list of a few things that she would do during this time. 1, on some winter nights, she would force Wayne, the new husband, to sleep outside. And then there was one night where it was snowing very heavily and she kicked out both Wilfred and Wayne. They both had to leave the house. She locked them out. There's snow. So Wilfred went into like the small camper that was on the property and he invited Wayne inside so that they could sleep somewhere warm. Both of the abused men outside in a camper on his own damn property. The camper was actually really small, so even though Wayne went inside for a little bit, he ultimately declined staying inside so that he would give Wilfred his space, and he went out into the barn and tried to find some clean hay that he could lay in during the snowstorm. Wayne said later, I was ashamed to let anyone know I was living like this in America. But despite the abuse, no matter how vicious she got during a fight, he said, I refused to strike her. On another occasion that her new husband, Wayne, did not behave the way that she wanted, she, as usual, will just make stuff up and then try to fabricate or find evidence to like build around it so that people will believe her. And she called the police saying that Wayne had assaulted her. She ripped the fabric of her clothes, struck herself. She pulled the collar around her neck like somebody had been dragging her. And then she dug her own nails into her skin until she drew blood. And then she called the police and said, look what he did to me. Look what he did to me. The final straw in the marriage was when Wayne walked into the house and he caught Sheila having sex with another man. So eventually he was like, I'm done. I don't give a fuck about America. I don't give a fuck about you. We're getting divorced. And 1 year later, the divorce was finalized. And that guy that Sheila was having sex with was a guy named James Brackett. Just like Wayne, Sheila also met this new guy at the chiropractor clinic. But you know, I said every time Sheila goes through a new breakup, she always makes a little modification to the type of guys that she's looking for. 1, she's looking for someone that excites her. And 2, she's looking for somebody that she can control. And 3, she's looking for somebody that cannot fight back against her abuse. And you know what? These other guys, it hasn't been working. You know, she tried the guy that she thought needed a green card. She tried the guy that was old and lonely. She tried the fast food guy. And everyone just kept leaving her. These men were too difficult for Sheila to control. So this time, she went after a 20-year-old that had a learning disability. So, you know, she starts dating this new guy, James Brackett. And she decides, well, let me just show who I am early, just to make sure. So, she does what she always does. She moves the new guy into the house with Wilfred, the common law husband. She moves out Wayne after the divorce, and she moves in the new guy. And Wilfred, who's been abused as fuck at this point, he welcomes the new guy in. He's nice to him. He shows some kindness. They all eat dinner together. It's like this weird, almost abusive throuple situation. And, they really Wayne, the previous husband, and this new guy, James, they really kind of saw Wilfred as almost like a father figure. Like, they said that, even though he was like Sheila's, quote, common law husband. I don't know what kind of fuckery this was over here, okay? Do you still have your empathy cap on? Because, bitch, we gotta talk. So then she decides she's gonna show James, or Jimmy, his nickname was Jimmy, this side of her a little early. One day, when he was taking a bath, she came in and she busted his 2 front teeth out. Then, a week later, when he was just in the house using the bathroom, she came through the roof with a hatchet. She came to the fucking roof with a hatchet. I'm sorry, podcast listeners. I am walking around my room right now because I can't handle it. She so badly wanted to terrorize him and show him what she was, quote, capable of, that she came through the roof with an axe. Just like her father. Jimmy escaped and ran into the woods. And Sheila loved that. She said, oh, okay. Well, now it's time to be nice. See if he comes back. And if this works, this is the exact type of guy that I want to be around. She would also make random accusations to him of him being a pedophile, of him hurting animals, of him cheating on her. These were all projections of her herself. She was a cheater. After this comment, I would not be surprised if she hurt animals. And everything she would accuse people of are things that she either did or considered doing herself, or things she feared. Then finally, one day, Jimmy gets like a chance to get away. Sheila attacked him with a large pair of gardening shears. This is so interesting. She has a history of attacking people with scissors or shears. She was holding these one day and just came after him. Well, he happened to have a folding pocket knife in front of him, and this enraged her. So she just went after him, like putting a giant gash on his forehead, clipping his ear. He never touched her, and he ended up going to the hospital. Well, Jimmy's injuries were pretty severe, and when they took a report at the hospital, he told them pretty much everything that happened. And then Sheila was taken in and booked for second-degree assault. But guess what? Sheila's not afraid of the police, and she's not afraid to manipulate them. She starts to tell them all of these terrible lies about Jimmy. And somehow, the police don't know who to believe, and so they say, oh, okay, well, both of you are getting charged. Oh, this is her dream. She doesn't even care that she's, going away with the police. She's like, nah, if I'm going down, you're coming with me. And I love it. There's no end to the amount that she's willing to self-destruct in order to punish people that question her power. To me, the sad part of this is part of it comes from somebody not caring about you so much as a child. They don't care what happens to you. They don't care how you feel. That as an adult, then you don't care what happens to you. You don't care about going to rock bottom. You don't care about anything. There are no consequences in life when you hate yourself. So that's what I believe that Sheila was deep in. Nothing mattered, as long as everybody was going down with her. Now, Sheila is also not afraid of the courtroom. She was actually pretty well known to police and people in the court that she would try to represent herself quite often. It was usually a laughing spectacle for everybody in the courtroom, but she really believed that this was working in some capacity. But in this situation, she had gone too far. The proof was there. They had photos of the injuries. She admitted to having the garden shears, but she really truly believed that she could talk her way out of this. And when she was unheard in the courtroom, she just absolutely spiraled out. She started screaming that she was bleeding and nobody would help her. She'd been asking for help all day. And then eventually she yelled, "I'm bleeding from the vagina and nobody will help me." Like, she was implying she was having some kind of real major issue. So the judge had her removed from the courtroom immediately, and they did a medical exam, and she was on her period. Everybody knew that this chick was batshit fucking crazy, so the judge actually ordered that she had to be sent to a mental institution for 3 days before he could even give the sentencing. And then at some point during this week, she just kind of manipulated Jimmy into dropping the charges. And then shortly after that, Wilfred mysteriously passed away. They said that it was heart failure, but it was odd. In his will, he left Sheila his 115-acre estate worth $2 million, along with his other properties throughout New Hampshire, nothing for his children, and all of his reserves. And then she cut off his children and cremated his body immediately and sprinkled his ashes on the farm, and then never spoke about Wilfred again. After Wilfred passed away, Jimmy was just entirely in the clutches of Sheila. Even after everything happened, he was still afraid to leave. Sheila's tactics are one thing, but it's important to remember that Sheila's tactics don't work on everybody. She is looking for people that were not taught how to stand up for themselves. And I'm talking about this because there are so many of us, my family was like this too, where we're taught, hey, be kind to everybody, be nice, keep your head down, don't say anything, and eventually they'll know your character and they'll know that you're a good person. Bitch, you are the exact person that people like this are looking to take advantage of. If your family did not teach you how to stand up for yourself or how to set boundaries, if you want to be nice in this world, you gotta learn how to do it. And I'm not saying that this is a critique of Jimmy. He didn't have the tools. Nobody taught him. Nobody was defending him, and he had been isolated by this abused woman. But as you know, in Sinister, I like to give little things about if you are similar to this person, what should you actually do, right? Not what should they, quote, have done. No, it's if you are in this situation, what could help? And hey, if you're not good at setting boundaries, practice setting some small ones. Think about the littlest, tiniest things that you can ask for in regards to your needs or setting boundaries, and it'll help just a little bit. You got to take that first step. But if you're somebody that has always had your needs brushed to the side, you're hyper independent, or you don't always know how to stand up for yourself, you got to learn these abilities because you are a sweet, lovely little light in this world, and people want to put you out. Now, back to this. Jimmy finally does it. After a couple years in these multiple cycles of abuse and a lot of threats on his life, Jimmy finally decided to leave. At this point, she had convinced him that she had dirt on him, that he was a pedophile. And she was very confidently telling people he was a pedophile. He's a pedophile. He admitted to me. She would use the phrasing, he confessed to me that he was a pedophile. And Jimmy is so fucking scared at this point that he actually hitchhiked through a blizzard to get to a homeless shelter just to get away from her. It also seems like she really loved to torment people during nights of inclement weather because there was even more fear of like, well, I don't want to go outside there because it's dangerous. Is it safer in here? There was a pattern with the weather too. It's so strange. So once again, attacking people during this blizzard. Eventually Jimmy is like, I can't do this anymore. I've got to go. And he leaves. So after he leaves, the neighbors, everybody's watching this chick, okay? They're like, what is going on in crazy Sheila the Peeler's world? Well, as usual, she's cycling dudes in and out of the house. Here's what one of the neighbors said that actually witnessed all of it. Quote, she told me how she picked out ones she liked and would bring them home, said Bruce in regards to how she chose men. Sheila didn't take the usual dating routes to meet men. Sheila made attempts to seduce delivery men that came to her door. She would bat her eyes at them, sometimes wearing nothing but a fur coat. When companies stopped deliveries to her home, she would go after the handyman or plumber on a service call. She sought out men at homeless shelters or off the street. She would dangle the carrot of living on a beautiful horse farm on the countryside to them, having safety, food, and anything that they wanted. I feel like some people might have picked this up before, but it's the internet, and I can't say everything that I want because people will be like, Boze, well, how do you know that? How do you know that she wasn't just traumatized or something? After that one right there, I'm saying it. This woman is a predator. She is a predator. No ifs, ands, or buts. I understand that a lot of you are with me and you're like, yes, she's a predator. But you have to fucking understand that there's like the 10% of people that went through something similar as her and they don't see her actions as predatory. So I say to you, we say together, predator, all together. Predator. And then to you guys that don't fully believe it, guys, this is predatory behavior. Okay, I'm talking to both my kids here, okay? And I'm telling you both the same thing. So next, she eventually does pick up a guy from the homeless shelter. His name was Michael DeLog. And Michael didn't stay around for too long, but not a lot of people met him. But the people that did, they said that like Sheila would always give him commands like, get me a glass of water, or where's my purse? And if he didn't jump, she would get very annoyed with him. This is another grooming tactic of like asking for small tasks. Men love to feel needed. They do, okay? You tell him, babe, get me this, do this. He's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that, you know? But for her, this was like, do what I say or else. Do what I say or else. Every small request had a risk of punishment on the other side, whether it was emotional discomfort or being physically hit, because Sheila was not afraid to do that. So let's fast forward to 2006. Have I painted a pretty clear picture so far of this freaking psycho? She ends up finding out about these like adult sex kind of hotline things. And she calls into one of the services where she can set up a voicemail. Now you remember her letter to Wilfred originally. I am 28 and 5'5", blah, blah, blah. She creates this description of herself. She puts on her sultry voice. She explains how she can be contacted. And soon she gets a bite from a guy named Kenneth County. Kenneth County was 24 years old and Sheila was in her late 30s at this point. Kenneth had really big dreams of independence. He also had a learning disability. He had a lot of support from his mother and his family. His mom was very active in his life, but Kenneth could not really read or write at all. Even with a lot of help, he just couldn't fully grasp it. And there were some other issues, but you know, one thing that Kenneth did love was he loved action movies. He loved seeing somebody just come in, looking for justice, being the star. Like he loved it. It excited him and it hyped him up so much. And you know, this was like one of the few things that he loved and was interested in. And so one day he tells his mom, Mom, I'm going to join the army. And his mom, like knowing that he has some learning issues, is like so terrified, does not want him to go. But like she feels like she doesn't really have a choice. Like it's something that he's interested in. He wants to do on his own. And, you know, there's a great support system for him in the military. She feels like if he's going to go off on his own, if anywhere, okay, fine. So he enlisted in the army after high school, and there's certain points like during training where you can see your family. And his mom said that she remembered coming up to him after he had been in training for a while, and he had gotten bigger, he had gotten stronger, he looked confident, his smile was beaming. It was the first time that she saw her son really happy and not struggling to figure out like where his place was in the world. And so she was like, okay. But due to a few reasons, Kenneth unfortunately was not able to complete basic training and they sent him home on medical discharge. After this, Kenneth was completely crushed, but he still had dreams of having some type of independence. So, you know, with his mom's blessing, he moves out, he gets a roommate, and he's like trying to do the thing, trying to live life on his own. And unfortunately, he ends up hearing about this hotline and he calls in and ends up getting in touch with Sheila. Kenneth and Sheila met up on Valentine's Day at a hotel called the Seaport Hotel. And here's the other thing. He showed up on time, but she showed up hours late. She doesn't give a fuck about anybody. Like she showed up 2 or 3 hours late for this. When she arrived, she was all done up. She came in charismatic, bold, entertaining. They laughed, they talked, blah, 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 blah. And then 2 hours later, she invited him back to her car and they had sex in the car. This was common for Sheila. At one time, she hitchhiked somewhere and got a ride from this guy, and then she said she had sex with him to thank him for the ride. So, you know, jumping into something sexual for Sheila, to me, I think this was just all about attention. Nothing made her feel more in control, more wanted, more needed than sex. Now, during this same exact meeting where they met for the first time, Sheila promised him a lot of things. She promised him a home. She promised him love. She promised him independence. And she even told him that he could have a new name, Adam Olympian LaBarre. Who is Adam? Who is Olympian? And LaBarre is like not even her last name. It's the last name that she stole from Wilfred, okay? She told this to this boy the first time they met, right after she had sex with him. She's a predator. She is a predator, okay? There's no ifs, ands, or buts here. Sorry, I have to say that because y'all know people sometimes, they'll be in the comments like, well, I don't know if this person... Nope. Predator. Can I get a predator stamp? Now, just like last time, Sheila decides to swiftly move into her violent tendencies. I don't know if it's because at this point she was completely unhinged or she just wanted to close the gap faster. Just a few days after she had met Kenneth, nobody had heard from him. At one point, his mom had gotten in contact with him, and it was him calling her and saying, "Mom, I can't leave." And his mom was like, "What? What's going on?" And that's all he would say. He said to her, "I can't leave." And then eventually his mother hears another voice on the phone. It's Sheila. And that voice says, "Give me the phone." She takes the phone and she says, "Hi, we're happy. We don't need you calling here." And she hung up. So Kenneth's mother ends up calling the police, of course, and the police are familiar with Sheila. They hate her. She's annoying. They kind of figured this would be the typical. So they showed up at the house looking for Kenneth to do a wellness check, and she said, "He's taking a warm bath." Dude, I'm telling you right now, some moms, if they were there and it wasn't just the police, they would have busted that door down. Well, she tells them he's in the bath. He can't come here right now. And they said, "Okay, well, you need to produce him. We need to see that he's okay." And so Kenneth comes to the door and he's very quiet. He doesn't speak, but he's there. He's alive. He seems fine. So they leave. The next time they see Kenneth is 2 weeks later in March of 2006. This time it is because they've gotten a call to a local Walmart. There's a woman screaming and taking pictures, and she's got this guy with him, and it's very strange. Well, they get there, and it's Sheila. She's got Kenneth in a wheelchair with this big black hat, kind of like big wide-brimmed black hat covering his face. But you can see he's got gashes all over his face. He's got gashes on his arms. His arm is very poorly bandaged up. The clothes are not matching. He's bloodied and bruised all over his face. He looks like he's in really bad shape. When the police get there, of course, they recognize Sheila and they try to talk to Kenneth, but he won't speak. She tells the police that he's fine, and they try to talk to him again. And Kenneth just kind of nods his head like everything's okay, and he won't speak. They tried more directly to get him to communicate, and they asked him why he was in the wheelchair, and Sheila butts in. The wheelchair's a joke. It's a joke. He was in an accident, and so the wheelchair's just a joke. And when they tried to talk to him, she told him, "Do not speak to them." And Kenneth didn't. He obeyed. The more they pushed, the louder and more boisterous she got, just screaming and insisting that he had been attacked by a woman in the store. Of course, that's not true. Unless you consider her the woman in the store. The police have to let them go, and they watch Kenneth hobble, trying to get out of the wheelchair and into the car. But there was nothing that they could do. A few days later, his mom called again, panicked and worried, because apparently Kenneth had been left on the farm alone for some period of time. And she told the police that he has the mental capacity, quote, of a 12-year-old, quote, and he cannot be left on his own. He doesn't know how to do anything. Then at 1 o'clock in the morning, Sergeant Sean, who had been dealing with this whole fiasco between Kenneth and Sheila for a couple weeks, gets a strange call. It starts off with Sheila saying, "Kenneth doesn't live here anymore." Then you hear a click, and it's a tape recorder. The officer heard the white noise of the tape recorder, and then he started to hear Sheila speak. Sheila's voice said that she was, quote, "the justice of the peace of New Hampshire." And then her voice changed after this announcement, and she started asking these direct questions. It was Sheila talking to Kenneth, and Kenneth sounded extremely out of it, as though he had been hurt or injured. And Sheila, in a very hollow and forceful tone, said, "Have you been touching children? Have you been raping little girls? Have you been doing this and this and this?" And with each horrible accusation. You hear this muffled and sad voice from Kenneth that just says, yes. And then she started to ask about Kenneth's nieces and nephews, and she asked him directly, did you assault so-and-so? Did you touch so-and-so here? Each time, Kenneth meekly says, yes, yes. She forced Kenneth to say that he was raping and molesting his nieces, step-siblings, and other young relatives. She forced him to say that everybody in his family was a victim of him. She also then went on later to tell the police that Kenneth was having sex with his mom. So according to Sheila, Kenneth was a pedophile that was molesting everyone in his family, and also his mom was also a pedophile, and she's molesting everybody too. And Sheila is the justice and the peace of New Hampshire on a mission to destroy the world of pedophiles. And then you hear this dry heaving, coughing, this like gasping for air, and it's coming from Kenneth. The officer described it as a guttural gagging, like something was happening to him. And then Sheila starts to say on tape, Kenneth County is now faking that he's throwing up. Kenneth County is now faking that he fainted. Afterwards, you don't hear any sounds from Kenneth. And then you start to hear Sheila in a new voice yelling, why? Why? This is a woman that is trapped in her past and is enacting it on the world around her through the lens of a delusional mission that is only real to her. I firmly believe that if anyone had ever told Sheila LaBarre that it was okay for her to hate her father for what he did to her, that she would not be taking it out on these random men that were never anything like her father. She did not know what to do with that relationship and what that love or what that hate was. So it rattled inside of her to every single person that she came into contact with. But here she is, torturing people because she never dealt with her past. The tape ended and Sheila hung up the call with Sean. Sergeant Sean went to the property the next day to look for Kenneth. The gates were closed. There were signs posted everywhere saying, "You're being recorded. You're under surveillance." Sheila loved to record everything because she felt like she could chop up and manipulate any evidence however she saw fit. If she had all the pieces and the other people had nothing, she felt like she would be able to control the narrative. But the officers don't care. They're looking for Kenneth County. And what they find in her backyard is a burnt mattress and a big hunk of flesh that has bones sticking out of it. There were rabbits running around the property, and when they asked Sheila what was that big hunk of flesh, she actually responded to them by saying, "Oh, it's either a rabbit or a pedophile." And they said, "What?" And she said, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. It's a rabbit." And he said, "Well, what do you mean a pedophile?" Considering the call that he just had that night, yeah, he went straight to the police and got a search warrant for her property. But I will say this, the part that really pisses me off is they didn't get the warrant until the next day. And when they got back, that evidence was gone. On March 26th, just a couple of days after Kenneth had gone missing, Sheila sat outside of a pet shop with a bunny. She had a couple of rabbits on her property, but this one was kind of special to her. It was super cute. While she was outside of the pet shop, she saw two young kids, and they were running in to look for somebody to maybe take home that day. Well, she had her little pet bunny with them, and she kind of entices the kids to fall in love with this bunny. "Oh, you can pet him. Oh, he's my favorite. Oh, he's so important." She literally convinces them to buy this bunny off of her instead of buying an animal from the pet shop. She then gives the children an offer they cannot refuse. She said that if these children took the bunny off of her, she would give them $100. So they don't have to spend any money. They get a cute rabbit to take home, and they get $100. Well, hell yeah, lady, give us that rabbit. Well, then Sheila takes it a step further because she is such a kind person. She even says, "Hey kids, do you guys need a ride back home? Come on, you got a heavy bunny. get in my car. Never thought I'd be saying that phrase. Heavy bunny. All right, you're not going to believe this part, but this is just fucking crazy. So she picks up these kids from the pet shop and then takes them back home. And Sheila meets their mom, Pam. At first, Pam is like, what the fuck? Well, Sheila goes inside and she turns on the charm. She and Pam hit it off. They start chatting, and then you're not going to believe this. The news report for Kenneth County comes up on the television screen and Sheila is on the run. Now, the news report does not mention Sheila by name, but it does show Kenneth. And immediately Sheila gets panicked and she starts talking herself. Well, she starts to tell her new friend Pam, oh my God, that's my ex-boyfriend. I don't know where he's been. Well, just a couple days ago, he confessed to me that he was a pedophile and I haven't seen him since. And Pam, this new friend that like literally met Sheila hours ago and was at first apprehensive about her, but now is like, yeah, come on over for dinner. She fucking believes it. She believes it and starts eating it up. Now, Sheila is very manipulative and she knows that Pam has 2 young kids. And so, of course, when new friend says ex-boyfriend's a pedophile, Pam is like, okay, well, I'm going to help you. Like, what do we need to do? And within hours, Sheila had enlisted an accomplice, this random woman, to help her. This is what I call preying on other women's need to help other women. And I say this because if my kid, this is actually pretty easy to fall into. It sounds absolutely insane, but this was in the early 2000s. Sheila had a nice car. She was well put together. She probably made up an excuse why she was getting rid of the bunny. And then Pam, who is just a mom, of course she wants more girlfriends. She's vulnerable to this. And then her new friend is in need. So she's like, yeah, I got you, girl. Dude, guys, how many of you would meet somebody that seems convincing and they're in a real pickle and you're like, okay, what resources can I dedicate to this? I'm going to do it. It sounds crazy, but a lot of people would do it. Now, what's actually crazy is Sheila's whole plan here Sheila's plan is the crazy part. Pam's about to get a little crazy, but Sheila's part is real fucking crazy. So Pam is not hiding her in a bunker or anything. Sheila tells Pam she needs an attorney, and Pam digs around and finds somebody. Sheila's pretty serious about this because she took out $50,000 and cut a check to finally get some help. The chick that's been representing herself for years, well, now she realizes she needs something. So Sheila secures an attorney, but little does the attorney know the reality of the situation. In the initial conversation, Sheila told him nothing but lies, and he agreed to take the case. But as they start to dig into everything, it's not going to look good for Sheila. But for right now, she wants to protect her home and her horses and her businesses. So she comes up with a plan, and she starts giving Pam, the new woman that she met less than 24 hours ago, she starts giving Pam all these orders. And Pam listens. She tells Pam that she needs to sign over her horses to her. And Pam needs to go to the property and show the police a bill of sale so that the police can't take her horses. This is just another strange control ploy. I mean, dude, when control freaks start to get into delusional territory, they really believe everything that they're saying and everything that they think happened to them. They really believe it. And so they start making a lot of strange chess moves to keep control by any means necessary. But the thing is, you just cannot enter their world of delusion. You got to keep it in the real world. And that's also what people like this are looking for. They're looking for people that are willing to abandon themselves and their morals and go into this weird delusional world where Sheila is omnipotent. If you don't have a home of your own, then you join hers, right? And Sheila's world is fucking weird, but she's really good at sucking people into it if she can identify the right type of person. So Pam goes through with the plan and she shows up to the property to show the bill of sale and say, wait, give me those horses. Those are mine. And they were like, no, ma'am, you need to go to the precinct and talk to them to figure this out. We know Sheila's game. You can fuck right off. And as Pam was leaving, they took a couple pictures of her license plate. Pam doesn't realize how hard she's being manipulated. So she goes back to Sheila and says, hey, they need you to come down to the station as well. And Sheila's like, oh, fuck no, I'm not going back there, because she doesn't know what they found on the property and what they have on her. So she said she needs to hide. Remember I said that people in their Delulu land will come up with really weird ideas? Where do you think Sheila's gonna hide? She requested that Pam drops her off at the cemetery to hide. The cemetery thing is just crazy to me, because there are people that tend to the cemetery, people that check graves all the time. Like, there are people there that are all the time. And if somebody is hiding, sleeping, or exhibiting odd behavior, they're calling the fucking police. They are calling the police. Now, it took 17 days after they got the warrant for them to confirm that the body parts in the backyard were actually those of Kenneth County. They also found blood spatter in the house, and they were able to determine that he had been stabbed multiple times, beaten with a chain, and then burned in the backyard. The investigators also found items from Michael DeLog, who I told you guys before, that was the guy that she found at the homeless shelter. Well, when they looked around for Michael, they called his mom and found out that he had been missing since early March, just a few weeks prior. Then they checked the bathroom and they found his dried blood in the bathroom. During the 17-day investigation, they tried to flush the toilets in the house a couple of times, and one of them clogged up pretty bad. The police believed that there could be evidence or body parts down there, and when they plunged the toilet, they found Michael's birth certificate, his cell phone, human bones, and a spent shell casing. Finally, on April 2nd, Sheila was formally arrested and charged with murder. When they had found her at this point, she was going by the name Casey Washington. She had also dyed and cut her hair. People really think that they're smarter than they really are. Like, the police department has been staring at this woman for 15 years while she got on everybody's fucking nerves. When they went to trial, the defense had overwhelming evidence that Sheila was on a delusional spiritual mission to rid the world of pedophiles. She had selected all of these people and forced them to admit that they had some type of wrongdoing involving children, though they had no history of doing so. Probably, in my opinion, as a way to finally have somebody take accountability for what her father did in her weird, twisted world. But she really did believe this. She would really write things in her journal that said that she had special powers, and it allowed her to judge and enact punishment, including executions on others. She had extreme paranoia, but she believed that she was on a divine mission that was sent to her from God to find and uphold justice. She really, truly, in her heart of hearts, believed that. But I personally think that that's because there was a child who was so wronged that they had to cling to something. They had to find something in the world of delusion, and this was the one thing that saved them. Her believing that she had some other higher purpose. And as life went on, this is the purpose that she developed. The problem is that Sheila genuinely believed that she was omnipotent and touched by God himself to deliver judgment and punishment to those that she deemed worthy of judgment and punishment. And those people that she deemed worthy, they were anybody that echoed her past. In one of her notebooks, she had written a verse that said, "Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, or harp must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not will be thrown into the blazing furnace." In another recording, Sheila says, "I am not human. I am an angel. Angels can have tempers, and angels can have problems." Delusions aside, the prosecution came in and they described her as crude, manipulative, cruel, and vindictive. 2 members of the Epping Police Department from her house in New Hampshire testified that they had records of more than 100 calls from her in 20 years, ranging from general complaints about her to domestic violence calls. These calls got so frequent that eventually the police chief actually implemented a rule that said no less than 2 officers should respond to a call at Sheila's house, because she would often answer the door in various stages of undress and flirt with the officers. So when her husband Wilfred was calling the police, if they only sent 1 officer, she would sleep with him while Wilfred was home. While he was calling for help, she was showing him, "You have no power here." Finally, in June of 2008, she goes down and gets found guilty. Sheila only lasted this long because she looked for people that wouldn't question her. She looked for people that she could project her own mission onto. She looked for people that would let her do whatever she wanted to do. Now, look, I don't know at what point your empathy cap came off. I just kind of kept it running, but I hope you can tell I always have immense empathy for the child that came into this world and had no idea what was going on. I still feel sympathy for that little girl that was being chased through a fucking cornfield with an axe by her father. That's why I like to do this show. Because if I see the patterns, we talk about the patterns. Maybe you have the patterns or there's somebody in your life that has the patterns. Don't just turn a blind eye to it. Some of these people at some stages of their life can be helped. But you know what? I think Sheila reminds me a lot of Michelle Notek. This one's just a bad egg.